The 4x4 is nothing more than a delicious excuse. An excuse to get away from the city and to discover what really drives us and replenishes us. As your 4x4 journey matures, those excuses, well, they diminish. So we need to find newer, more grand adventures. And we're in the middle of the perfect excuse right now. A meandering, trackless journey to the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert. Gee, why not? G'day, I'm Pat Callinan and welcome to what promises to be quite an epic adventure in our show. We started our adventure in Birdsville and we made our way west over the French line and we're headed towards the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert, one of the most remote places not just in Australia but on the entire planet. This place is extremely difficult to get to, so much so that I thought we'd do it last episode, but we had no chance. We got slowed down massively by the terrain, by the sand dunes, by boggings, all sorts of challenges that this trip throws up, which makes it so much fun. So I tell you what, we've got lots more adventure in mind as we make our way towards the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert. This journey started last episode at Birdsville and we headed due west along the QAA line out to Poeppels Corner. Then, around the Hay River, we left the tracks and headed off into virgin desert in search of the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert. After that, we plan on getting to the iconic Geosurveys hill before driving the Madigan Line and the Colson Track into Alice Springs. Since leaving the French line, our journey has slowed considerably. We're about to drop off quite a steep sand dune, and really, a lot of these sand dunes look a little bit worse than what they are. You can go quite gingerly down them, and for a first timer it can be scary. A big mistake that a lot of people tend to make is they will sort of freak out and hit the anchors and then the car will sort of slew sideways. That's when you can have a few problems. You're better off to take your feet off the pedals and then regain that steering and cruise down the hill in the direction that you want to go, not where the sand wants you to go. The slow progress and rough conditions are really starting to take their toll. Fortunately, it's not hard to find a place to stop and take a break. What better way to stretch your legs than a game of outback soccer? It's Callinan United versus the film crew. There aren't too many camper trailers that you can take across Australia's Simpson Desert and know that when you get to the other side that camper trailer is going to be in just as good condition as it was when you started your journey. But certainly the one behind me, I can say with my hand on my heart that is one of those camper trailers. It's the Track T-van. They have been around for a while, but behind me is Mark IV, the fourth generation of their famous T-van, and I reckon it's worth a look. Like all track trailer products, the T-van Mark IV has been subjected to a rigorous prototype testing regime. And while maintaining the famous T-van look and performance, the Mark IV has had a number of significant changes. There's now the option of two variants of kitchen, the classic kitchen as on the previous T-van models, or like our Mark IV, the all-new premium kitchen upgrade, with a 30% larger lock-up space than the classic kitchen. The premium kitchen features twice the bench space of its smaller counterpart and a Telford 3-burner glass-topped cooktop, matching stainless steel sink with a flick mixer style tap, draining board and a cutlery drawer located below.
The kitchen utilises a lock-in lock-out handle and slides on Track Trailer's own design of ball bearing runners. The integrated windshield is deployed by simply raising it into position. Another feature for the Mark IV is the fully integrated electrical package. Features include a master switch for electrical isolation, a 6-switch panel with integrated fusing for lights, stereo, water pump and fans, a battery monitor or voltage meter, 240 volt outlets with safety switching, a 7 amp solar controller or Red Arc BC-DC controller, water tank gauge and a stereo option featuring docking station. Other changes include a larger rear water tank, a redesigned front box, sliding glass windows with magnetic insect screens, and improved dust sealing on the pannier locking doors. Also, depending on the specification, the new Mark IV is 50 to 100 kilograms lighter than the previous model. That's a 5 to 10% weight saving, which translates into improved fuel economy and increased payload. But the T-Van Mark IV still features all of the equipment that set it apart from the other camper trailers, like storing its canvas tent neatly in the rear hatch, not on the bed, eliminating wet bedding caused by wet canvas. The insulated walls and roof make it more comfortable for both warm and cold climate camping, and the huge interior storage areas practically eliminate the necessity to carry anything extra in your vehicle. All the while, the Mark IV rides on Track's asymmetrical link suspension, which really is the pinnacle of camper trailer suspension in my books. The Track T-Van Mark IV really is one of the finest outback camper trailers money can buy.
The assumption for people that haven't been out in the Simpson Desert before is that there is a whole lot of these mobile dunes that are fairly much clear, but really that's not the case. The Simpson Desert is full of really quite stable sand dunes. But I tell you what, the plant species that are out here are just spectacular, and the beauty of it is that we haven't seen a single weed species since we've been out here. But boy oh boy, we've seen some beautiful plants. Within the swales, you'll find species like acacias, that's your wattles, and your golden spinifex, which look absolutely brilliant at sunset. You'll also find these grevilleas and occasionally honey grevilleas, where you can actually drink the nectar when they're in flower. And right down the base of the swales, you'll find the mullamullas, some desert peas, and the biggest species, which is the gidgee. But up on the top of the dunes, you've got your cane grass, you've got your wiregrass, and the one that is the prettiest at the moment is certainly these button flowers, this gorgeous white and lavender hues, and they just seem to make an absolutely gorgeous photo. So whether you know what they are or not, doesn't really matter, but I tell you what, they sure put the icing on the cake of a Simpson Desert adventure. For the boys, the sand dunes aren't an opportunity to look at the flora. To them, the Simpson is just a big red slide. And to see who can make it the furthest on the self-inflating mattress. But they're not the only ones trying to get to the bottom. Once you get out on the road on these journeys, particularly this remote one that we're on right now, you want to make sure that your preparation is really up to speed, because that will allow you to take a big deep breath and just enjoy the journey, rather than that actually sitting back there going, oh my goodness, what if something goes wrong? I don't quite know how I'm going to be able to fix it or how I'm going to be able to limp across the desert. And the trip preparation for this journey is really not that different to a lot of other remote travel journeys. Now, motor vehicles run on fluid, and they're obviously lubricated by fluid as well. So you've got to make sure that all those different parts of the vehicle, your differentials, your transmissions, your engine, all have the right sort of fluid to go into those parts. And I tend to play it safe on these remote journeys and stick with a genuine product, because they are quite specific about what goes into these products these days, and I find that just sort of takes any of the worry out of my brain. Another few things that you need to take, well, you've got to think about how that engine actually drives. So for the Amaroks, you've got to make sure that we've got a drive belt. These serpentine belts, I take a couple of them because if these things happen to break, and look, they are very sturdy, so I'm not expecting it to happen, but if they do break, I've lost the drive to the entire vehicle. We've also got to make sure that parts that we can't simply fashion out of the bush are available. So our radiator hoses, always take a few spares of those, because if these things blow along the track, almost impossible to replace. And if you've got no cooling system, well, you've got no engine and you're not going anywhere fast. Got to make sure that everything stays nice and clean, so our filtration, got to ensure that your fuel filters, your oil filters are all well and truly sorted. You can get a bad dose of fuel out in the bush, so if that does happen, you're going to want to have spares that you can swap over nice and easy. Likewise, air filters. The Amaroks are really nice and big and beefy, and they're a combination of foam and paper, so I reckon it's going to last a fairly long time, but it doesn't hurt to take a few spares. They don't cost a lot, and really it's just good peace of mind for your engine, particularly if you're traveling in dusty convoy situations. Now, in the old days, engines were really quite simple things. As long as you had fuel, as long as you had oil, and as long as that cooling system was working okay, you could pretty much limp through to the next destination. But these days, well, your cars are run by a multitude of different computers. They run far more efficiently, and in my opinion, they're actually a lot more reliable than they were in the old days. But that does bring up some different problems if something does happen to go wrong. Now, if you're at home and your computer goes down, usually the first thing you do is turn the thing off and on. Well, something similar tends to happen with your modern four-wheel drive vehicles. Now, what you can do in this case is get yourself a tricky little diagnostics cord here, and this plugs into this vehicle's OBD port. So that's onboard diagnostics port. So that plugs into the vehicle just under the dash in the Amarok, and you've simply got a little USB that can plug into your laptop computer. And you would have previously downloaded some software that can actually talk to the computer in the vehicle. Now, this isn't so sophisticated that I can tap into everything and really change the engine's characteristics or anything like that, but it is good enough to simply clear fault codes on your engine. So it's a fantastic thing to grab, fairly inexpensive as well, and it just gives you a lot more peace of mind when you're traveling out here in these remote locations. And finally, you want to take a spare air fuel sensor. These sensors, they determine just how rich or how lean our engines actually run, but they can get dirty, and then they cause your fuel consumption to absolutely skyrocket, and that's not the sort of thing that you want to happen out here. So carrying a spare, it won't hurt at all. But the beauty of these spares is that they might seem a little bit expensive to invest in initially, but then you've got a whole lot of different fluids and spares that you can use right throughout your vehicle's service life. And of course, when you've got all these spares, it's a great idea to carry with you a workshop manual and the tools to get the job done, particularly tools that are specific to the vehicle that you're driving. For example, with the Amarok that I'm taking on this adventure, I'm taking a full set of torque sockets because that's how this Amarok is screwed together. And finally, you can't just rely on one spare tyre out in these parts. No matter how good your tyres are, you need to have at least 2 spares with you at all times, along with a puncture repair kit. I like to mount mine on rims just to save me a little trouble and a little time.
Well, this is pure cross-country driving. It is a very rough and bumpy ride. We are travelling at around about 10 kilometres per hour because there are no tracks, and what we're trying to do is stick to the base of these swales, and what we're after is the vegetation type, which is either native millet or sorghum. So this beautiful goldy coloured grass is usually the flattest area, but at the moment I'm driving over a big stand of it and it is still as bumpy as ever. So pretty hard going, pretty slow going, but what we're in search of is a shot line. Now that shot line, if you're not familiar with desert travel, shot lines were used by exploration companies, usually they were after oil or gas, and they used to drive a line in a straight line, same as, I guess they were named after rifles, so as straight as a shot, just in a direct straight line so that then they could do all their sampling based on those specific lines. And I guess it was the cheapest and easiest way. They just knocked a straight line through, so it was a quick and easy way to cover a whole lot of ground. Now these shot lines intersect the Simpson Desert quite a bit. Thankfully, I don't think they were all that successful in finding anything, or this area might have been too remote to actually mine. However, at the moment, for four-wheel drivers, these are one of the very few remnants of track that you can cover. They were usually pushed through with a bulldozer, and the shot line that we're tracking is a shot line that's a remnant from 1967. So it is highly likely that it will be very, very overgrown. We haven't heard of many vehicles at all that have actually used this shot line in the last few years. But fingers crossed, if we do actually find it, it'll speed our travel up just a wee bit, and it'll stop this rocking around a little bit, and hopefully it'll be slightly quicker. Maybe we might get up to 15 or 20 k's an hour instead of 10.
One of the handiest techniques to know when you're traveling through remote bush and you need to actually repair your vehicle or parts of it is simple stick welding. It's a pretty basic old technique, but most of the time you can get away with the stuff that you've already got in your vehicle. So let me take you through the basics of stick welding. First of all, you're going to need a couple of batteries. Now, you can have either deep cycle batteries or starting batteries, it really doesn't matter. And don't worry, when you're welding, it's very unlikely that you're going to actually drain those batteries down as long as they're full when you start. This technique doesn't use a whole lot of power, so you're pretty safe there. Now, once you've got those batteries out of your vehicle, and you do need to get them out because you don't want to short anything in your vehicle itself, that's when you can get started. Now, the most basic way of getting started is to use a couple of sets of jumper leads. Now, we've just gone one step better, and we've used one set of jumper leads and one more secure line that's going to connect things and give us a better electrical connection. Now, we haven't actually broken anything here, so there's nothing that we need to repair, but I thought I'd grab a couple of star pickets to use as an example. And the reason we use these is that they're actually made out of sprung steel, so they're extremely strong, and it's this sort of material that you can use to even fix something as big as a chassis. And the beauty of them and the shape of them is that they've got those two proud bits that come out, so you can actually get a nice connection on both of those corners. So for the purpose of this demonstration, we're just going to buzz a little line, connect these two star pickets together, and show you how it all works. But before we get started, first of all, a real note of safety. What you need to do is grab a fire blanket and throw it over the top of your batteries. The reason being is that our batteries do emit some pretty flammable gases, and believe you me, you don't want these things to go up in smoke. Remember, you're going to need them to start your vehicle as well. So we'll just cover that up. Then we need to worry about our own safety. So pop on a properly fitting helmet. These ones are the Speedlight helmets, so they adjust automatically. There are cheaper ones around, but these ones really do work pretty well, especially for a beginner welder. And then you've simply got your welding electrodes. Now, it's really important with these that they stay dry. As soon as they get a little bit damp or a bit of moisture in them, they create all sorts of problems. Obviously, we'll put on our welding gloves as well, keep our hands nice and protected. And then the next step is to create the earth. So you get that negative and you just attach it to the job. I'm just gonna put those two together, flick the mask down and make a connection. Now, if you find that you really want to prepare well, you can actually get one of these electrode holders and have it kitted out so that it connects directly to a battery terminal. Take it to an auto elec and they'll sort you out, but there are genuine advantages of using a kit like this. The beauty of this is that if, for example, you've got to get up under a chassis to get to quite a difficult kind of angle, you can simply bend it up and weld on that sort of an angle. Now, you can also cut these electrodes as well if you're having a few issues with it or if you need a shorter rod. So really handy bit of kit there. Now, one of the strongest welds that you can do, so if you're wanting to do a big chassis weld or something like that, is the triple layer weld. And that involves one layer up the middle between the two pieces and then another layer on either side of that center weld. And that really gives you not just great penetration in the original weld, but a lot of lateral strength as well. Having good solid communications is a really important part of your trip preparation when you're coming out into these remote locations. And one of the things that we always use is UHF communications in between the vehicles. It's the gold standard and it just seems to work. But the challenge with those UHF communications is they are only really line of sight communications. If, for example, one car is on the top of a sand dune and the other one is as well, then it will go a very long way, you know, 5Ks, 10Ks, possibly, if you're lucky, could be picked up by repeater stations. But out here in the desert, well, there ain't no repeater stations. So that's when you need some more serious long-range communications. And we use satellite telephones for that. Now, over the past few years, we've used these satellite telephones and we've had a lot of success with them. So you simply wind out the aerial, pop it up like that, and Bob's your uncle. All seems to work fairly well. You make a phone call like you normally would, but just keep in mind that there is a slight delay often, and occasionally it does sort of change the note of the voice. So someone may sound a little bit dreary at the other end, but that's simply because that signal is bouncing from here to a satellite and then back down to Earth again. But I've got a new little gadget that I want to show you, and it's pretty cool. So I've got my iPhone here, and this is called a sat sleeve. So I simply grab my iPhone and pop it down in there and pull the aerial up, and I have myself a satellite telephone. It's pretty cool because, as you can see, it's quite compact, slightly smaller I guess than the old style by not too much. It's got a little bit of depth to it, and what you simply do here is you download an app onto your iPhone and you actually make all your calls through there. So there is a sat sleeve app. You simply hit the button on that, you pair it through your Bluetooth on your phone, and then you dial like a normal phone call. But there is one important thing that I reckon you should consider with these sat sleeves. You see, a lot of people's mobile phones, they come with passcodes or fingerprint scanners to actually get into that iPhone, because the only way the sat sleeve will work is if the phone is actually talking to it. Now, if I was to become incapacitated and, you know, damaged in a car accident so that I couldn't actually talk and tell people what's going on here to access my phone,
then they could be in a lot of trouble, particularly if they didn't know how to work this device and pair up the Bluetooth. So I'd really recommend getting together with your entire party before you go and making sure that everyone can use those satellite emergency communications, whether it be an old style satellite telephone or a new sat sleeve, before you leave on your journey.
Well, it's late in the day and we've finally picked up a shot line. Now, these shot lines are interesting concoctions because they don't care where the sand dunes run, what direction, where the swales are and the depressions, what the smartest way, I guess, through the bush is. They will simply go in a straight line. So they go along the tops of dunes, they will go diagonally down a dune, down the bottom. They're usually fairly safe. And you can just sort of tell that it's a shot line because of these scrape marks where the surplus soil has been pushed aside, or the surplus sand in this case has been pushed aside to make way for the track. But they are a lot of fun. Our speed has certainly improved a bit. The morale of the team, as we have gone from 10 kilometres per hour up to, well, I'm looking at about somewhere between 20 and 30 k's an hour now. It is much better. So really pleasant drive and just a whole lot of fun. Something that I certainly haven't done a lot of, and it really does broaden your four-wheel drive experience when you get out here and you get off those major tracks. Sure, this is a track, but I'll tell you what, talk about faint.
When it comes to trip preparation, recovery gear is really, really important, certainly on a cross-country adventure that we're about to go on. So I want to sort of cover every eventuality. So off the front of the Amarok, I've got my worn winch mounted off the ARB bull bar. Now, I've got a trendy new winch now, and it actually has a wireless hand unit. So I can actually move the winch cable in and out simply by hitting a button on here. Pretty damn cool, and no more cables wound around bull bars to get in the way in a recovery. Now, obviously you need a comprehensive winching kit to work that. So we've got our snatch block, we've got our tree trunk protectors and cable extensions and cable dampeners, and obviously we've got some rated bow shackles in there, and all that comes in this handy ARB kit. But on top of that, we've also got a high lift jack. Now, I don't take a high lift jack on every adventure, but when we're looking at something where we may need to get a car out of a really deep bog, or we've got a four-wheel drive that needs some serious repairs, that's when a high lift jack really does come into its own. It will literally lift up one entire end of the four-wheel drive. It can lift it up nice and high, so then you can do those all-important repairs. But I would urge you never to actually rely on one of these things alone. Always, if you're doing any repairs, make sure you also support the vehicle with other things like spare tyres and things stacked underneath the vehicle, because they are so tall, they can tip over, and if you're working underneath the vehicle, pretty dangerous piece of equipment. And we've got our Max Tracks, a really fantastic way of getting out of a bog, in the sand, in the mud, even in the snow. They've got the scoop up one end, and that scoop enables you to dig out underneath the vehicle, and then you just simply place them in front of the tyres and just crawl on out. And 9 times out of 10, you'll grab plenty of traction off these tracks and simply drive on out. So that's the basics of our recovery equipment on this journey, and fingers crossed we won't need to be using it too much at all. With less than 10 kilometres to go to the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert, we decide to press on. And as the sun sets, the terrain doesn't get any kinder. Travelling in the dark slows our progress even more.
Holy cow, this is the roughest part of the trip and we're doing it at night.
And then the desert gets the better of us. There's nothing like many hands to make light work. And incidents like this are a great learning experience for the boys.
I'll tell you what, this night has turned into a mission. It was sunset and we thought, we reckon we're going to make this. We're going to get some nice sunset shots of the geographical centre of the Simpson Desert, and it's now 10 past 10. As soon as we turned off the trace and started tracking cross country, the sun dropped. We've been doing it in the dark and then this happened. So 10 past 10 now, and I think we've got about 1 dune to go, but these dunes are proving tougher than ever. It is so lumpy out here. Trying to get a straight line to get over these sand dunes is proving near impossible, and we're having to sort of track right up the valleys or the swales and then try and diagonally make our way up and over the sand dunes. So the geographical centre, when we actually land there, we're going to be happy. Not sure if it's going to be tonight or tomorrow though.
Last night we managed to pop a tyre off the bead, and that can happen reasonably regularly when you're four-wheel driving, particularly through this terrain around here, because you're running low tyre pressures. We're running around about 15 pound in the camper trailer, and when you're going over these little hummocks and everything that are all over the place here and trying to get a bit of momentum to get up over the sand dunes, cross-country work will certainly do that. So we're just going to try and reseat this tyre back onto the bead. We've inspected the tyre on both sides. It all seems to be okay. Doesn't look to be any punctures, so it's simply just knocked off the bead. The back side of the bead is all fine. It never came off the bead in the first place, so really we've just got to reseat this one. So what we're going to do is just have a look around here, and I can notice there's a little bit of sand that's still in there, so we're just going to clean that out. You've got to try and make sure that there's no obstructions in there at all, and I'm going to just pop it up this way and use our compressor to blow the sand out. I'm pretty satisfied that that is fairly clean. If you're in a different terrain, mud, or you just wanted to really make sure of it, you could get around that bead with a nice wet rag and really make a nice seal. Now you do need a reasonable tyre compressor to do this. You wouldn't try it with your little $20 Kmart compressor. They simply won't have the grunt to actually reseat a bead. So what we're going to do is we're going to use the power of our compressor, and to ensure that we get a big volume of air going in there, we're actually going to remove the valve. So we're going to remove the valve, and then we'll pump a whole volume of air and we'll get it up to sort of 45, 50 pound, and then quickly whip off the compressor and reinsert the valve. When we do this, it's important to really try and ensure that we push the rim down a little bit and really help the compressor along. Now it is really important that you don't put your fingers or anything under here, because when the bead pops on, it does pop on with a little bit of a bang, and you don't want to get anything stuck in there. So just make sure you keep your hands free from the edge of the rim there. But let's give it a go. So you just put pressure on it so you can try and stop that whisper of air, and I can just see the bead coming up now. It's just coming around here, and soon enough should get enough pressure to pop it up on this side as well. So it's all about that unobstructed flow of air. It's just steadily coming around. So we've reseated the bead here, just got this side to go. Okay, there we go. She's popped on, reseated nicely.
So we're just going to get a little bit more air in there, and then we'll unscrew things and attempt to throw our little valve in. So you've got to work fast, but we've maintained our bead, so that's good. The general tyre is good to go again.
After days and days of cross-country travel, our GPS has finally led us here, to the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert.
VW hubcaps up the top, Wilfred, how good's that? This tower was erected in 1995 by David Owen and Robert Corrier. Now, a fantastic service to the four-wheel drive community. They bought the mast out in 3 different parts with their families, their wives, and erected it here back in 95. And these are the same guys that actually put in all the markers, the star pickets, along the Madigan Line as well. So genuine four-wheel drivers that really should be acknowledged. And would you believe, right up the top of it, it looks like a Volkswagen has been here before us. Combi hubcaps. Not sure that the Combi actually made it out, but I know that the Amaroks certainly have.
Getting out here is a momentous occasion, so you'd better remember to record your adventure in the visitor's book.
Well, the geographic centre of the Simpson Desert. You've got to love it because it is simply a dot on a map. It is an excuse for four-wheel drivers, for you to come out here to explore some of the most remote and beautiful deserts Australia has to offer, and to challenge yourself, to challenge your vehicle. The Amaroks have blown me away and all our crew away on this trip. We weren't really sure if they'd make it without a trailer, but we threw trailers on behind both of them because we thought this car needs to prove itself in the Australian scenery, and they have. But we're here, we're still in the remote Simpson Desert, and we do need to make it back to Alice Springs. So lots more tough tracks ahead of us. We're going to do the Colson Track in the next episode, so make sure you tune in. We've also been navigating, and boy oh boy have we needed these navigators, via the HEMA HN7 navigator. It's our in-dash system, and we've also been navigating using the HEMA app, which is on the iPad, and that has given us the accuracy that we've needed to navigate to this specific spot. What an adventure, and there's more still to come. I'm Pat Callinan, and until next time, keep the shiny side up.
For a complete range of books, DVDs and magazine subscriptions, go to mr4x4.com.au. Here you'll find my cookbook, Recipes from the Road, which has over 100 practical recipes, plus my 4x4 starter guidebook and advanced 4x4 guidebook will give you the skills to conquer any sort of terrain you like. And don't forget Australia's premium 4x4 magazine. It's all here at mr4x4.com.au.